truly understand why America is the way it is right now, you have to go back in time. You have to look a little deeper. This situation is far more complicated than they make it out to seem. So many people have asked me, why is this happening? How is it possible that one incident in Minneapolis can cause rioting all across the world? We're seeing riots in France, we're seeing riots in England, we're seeing riots all across Europe, and of course, all throughout the United States. So what is the reason for this? Well, before we get into this interview from 1984, I'm going to leave you with some words from Malcolm X. This was recorded in 1963.
The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leader, who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gains, token progress.
Now that you heard what Malcolm X has to say about this situation, let's take a look at this 1984 interview with Yuri Besmanov. He was a defector from the KGB, and he has some insights as to what's going on today. Check this out.
Yuri Alexandrovich Besmanov. Mr. Besmanov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect.
A nightmare has swallowed America. The political system, the financial system, healthcare, and our
experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in the United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas.
What happens in the back rooms of some of these other kings and countries, and what they're really doing behind the scenes. Is it really possible? Let me show you something else that's come up. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this. I've been talking to several people in the last couple of weeks, and a lot of people weren't aware of what I'm about to show you. How many of you have ever heard of this guy? Joseph Gregory Hallett. Now, you can go on the internet and you can do all the same research I did, but what has happened, and this is a fact, this is an absolute fact, this Joseph Gregory Hallett, he served papers upon the Queen of England back in February. He also served papers upon President Putin in Russia, and President Trump was served with those same papers. And what happened and what is happening is this Joseph Gregory Hallett, and you can find those papers, they're on the internet. They're I don't know, maybe 50 pages long, and they're certified and signed and everything. It's not just something that's typed up. You'll actually see the certified documents. He served the Queen of England back in February amongst some of these other world leaders. And he states, now this is not me saying it. I want everyone to be clear. This is not your brother Charles saying this. I'm telling you what the papers say because I've read it. He has declared himself the Messiah. He literally calls himself the Christ. And he, in those papers, told the Queen of England that he is the rightful heir of the world and that he is the Messiah, the Christ, and that England, the crown, belongs to him. Within a week, now you guys can do this research. You got to understand this is something you got to do on your own because I've already done it. Within a week of the Queen being served, the Queen vacated the castle, the palace. and all of the royal family. They're no longer there. As of March, the royal family has vacated the palace without a fight, without a court battle. This guy has dethroned the royal family. It's true. They took the crest off the royal palace. They've taken the family coat of arms and crest off the gates of the palace. He, in fact, has, from what I see, he has, in fact, taken over England. And you got to understand, Donald Trump was also served. Is this guy laying claims to the whole world? Is this part of the Antichrist beast system starting to rise? We all need to take a look at this and take a close look at what we're really seeing happening around the world, because something did happen. The Queen of England has been dethroned. It's a fact. You guys can all look this up, do your research, do your due diligence. Don't just come up against us just because we put this on here. Please do your due diligence and research it just like I did. This event has happened. And is it possible that that's what we're seeing playing out here in America? That's why these elections have been turned upside down on their head? Is it possible? I'm just asking the question. Is it possible that they are not going to have any more presidents and rulers around the world? Is it possible that the book of Revelations is now forming and coming true before our eyes, where they're going to have 10 kings ruling the world, the United Nations? Do you know there's 10 people that run the United Nations? They are the head of the United Nations. Do any of you know that last year Barack Obama put in to be the next president of the United Nations? Yes, he did. Please go look into it. He did in fact do that last year. Is it possible that the New World Order is now setting up to have their takeover? This is very possible. This could be what we are all looking at. We could be looking at the ushering in of the beast system. And that's why we named the title of this video what we did, the number of his name, because we're going to show you some things that are going to be very shocking and startling. And that's why I'm opening the video with these teachings here, because we're going to dig deeper into this. We're going to find out that what we're saying could in fact be true, that what we are witnessing is the uncovering, the unveiling of the beast system, the Antichrist system taking over the world. And we just want every one of you to just take a time and do some research, do some due diligence, and look at some of the things we've just now shown you. Because what I'm about to show you next is jaw-dropping. What you're about to see is something that has come, like I said, from a couple of our brothers, Yanni and Ed, and our sister Emma on Discord. They started giving us some of this information, and we started digging a little bit deeper. And it's starting to look like that this could all very well be true. Now, let me show you what we're talking about. Let's go into the book of Revelations. All right. And the book of Revelations 13, what's the name of this chapter? The first beast. The first beast. Now, watch what we're about to show you of what is really playing out in this chapter. It's shocking. Let's get down into it. And that's going to be found in Revelation 13, about 16 or so. Now, I'm going to just read it to you, and then we're going to go over it in detail. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. It's the number of a man, and his number is 666. The number of a man is 666. Now let's kind of go into this in pieces. What's he saying? To receive a mark. We all know what's going on around the world. What are we seeing? All we keep hearing is vaccine, 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 vaccine. And a lot of countries are talking about, even America is talking about, this vaccine is going to be a forced vaccine. And they're now even talking about the military going in the streets and pulling people out of their houses and giving them this vaccine. The president, I shouldn't say president, but well, yeah, President Trump was kind of talking about it a month ago. And now Biden, he's literally come out and said it, that he's going to have the military in the streets giving out this vaccine to all the citizens. Since when does the military ever go on the streets of America? Do you know it's illegal for the military to be in the streets of America unless we're in wartime? Or unless there's insurrection? It's called the Insurrection Act. That means where the government's being toppled from the inside. The military has no authority and power to operate inside this country, and yet they keep announcing it, and no one's saying anything about it. Is it possible that this mark of the beast is this vaccine that they're talking about? And it very well may be, because they're talking about putting a dye inside of that vaccine. So once they give it to you, they can run a scan on your arm or wherever they put that to show that you did receive that vaccine. So it's possible. Now what? It says the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. You want to see something shocking? Here comes the shock. We're going to start now. Watch this very, very carefully. Watch what this is about to tell us. It says, let him that have understanding count. What does count mean? Let's get into this word count. In the old days, they used to use pebbles to count, right? But when you dig deeper into the definition, what does it say? Count means a ballot, a verdict, a ticket, to vote.
Hey, Charles, hit your plus sign there on that definition.
On the definition part?
Yep, right
there we go.
Thanks.
Perfect. It means to vote. What? Is everybody understanding this? Here is wisdom. Let him understand. The vote, the ticket, the ballot is the number of the beast. What? What? Didn't America just go through a very battled election where there's still no results? Why would this be in an end times understanding? Why would this word even mean that? To vote?
Go one more deeper, Charles. Right there into that one. To manipulate.
Quickly. The Enoch calendar is based on two things. It's based on, I've read it, all there, including Daniel, by their own ballots and their own election process. They have to certify it to be true. Then all the 50 states together have to certify that all of it is true. Do you know what's happened all there? Declare himself to be the president means where the government's being toppled from the inside. And pulling people out of their houses and giving them this vaccine. The president, I shouldn't say president, but well, yeah, count. What does count mean? Let's get into this word count. In the old days, they used to use pebbles to count, right? But when you dig deeper into the definition, what does it say? Count means a ballot, a verdict, a ticket, to vote.
Hey, Charles, hit your plus sign there on that definition.
On the definition part?
Yep, right
there we go.
Thanks.
Perfect. It means to vote. What? Is everybody understanding this? Here is wisdom. Let him understand. The vote, the ticket, the ballot is the number of the beast. What? What? Didn't America just go through a very battled election where there's still no results? Why would this be in an end times understanding? Why would this word even mean that? To vote?
Go
A
one more.
ballot?
Go one more deeper, Charles. Right there into that one. To manipulate the vote.
Yes, I already had. Yeah,
Oh,
to
my bad.
manipulate. To manipulate. To manipulate the vote. That's exactly what Mike's talking about. What's going on here? Let him have wisdom. Let him have understanding that the count is to manipulate the ballot, the vote, the ticket, the verdict, the final verdict. What just happened? Didn't Biden by himself declare himself to be the president? There's no final verdict. There's no final count. You know why? For all of you that are not in America, let me explain the system. The way it's supposed to work is whoever has the most electoral votes, they're tentatively, that means temporarily the winner, but each state government has to certify their own ballots and their own election process. They have to certify it to be true. Then all the 50 states together have to certify that all of it is true. Do you know what's happened so far in the last week and a half? Nothing. Not one state, not one legislature, not one government entity has certified the election. Joe Biden has not been rightfully elected president yet. And they even had it on the news last night. There's been no certification of the vote. There's been no certification and final ending of the election. I want to be clear about this. So what's this saying? Let him have understanding that there's going to be a manipulate. To manipulate. What did it say? To manipulate. Let's get back to that again. Sorry for that. The verdict, the ticket, the vote. Isn't that what we're going through right now? Isn't that the contention right now? Isn't Trump fighting this? He's saying the ballot, the count has been manipulated. The ballots have, that's what he's fighting right now. He's saying the ticket's been manipulated. Now let's go a little bit deeper. I want you all to grasp what I'm about to show you next. The beast. What's the beast? A dangerous animal. And then what? A destruction, a trap. So the count, the vote, the ballots that are being manipulated is a destruction. It's a trap. Is the magnitude and power of this hitting you, brothers and sisters? What they're telling us is this election, the voting, the counting, the ballots that have been manipulated is a destruction and a trap. And guess what? This only occurs one time in the entire Bible. One time. And it's only this one time where this meaning occurs. And what's his number? Oh, we've barely started. You think your jaw's dropping now? Watch the rest of this. What's the beast number? To make to doubt. Aren't they making us doubt the ballots, the count, the manipulation that's going on? Isn't this what's going on? To make to doubt, to lift up, to take away, to carry away? What are they doing? What's going on here? Could it be that through all of the Bible studies that have been going on, that people have never really come to understand what this means, because we had to be in this day and time to understand what this verse really means and what these words really mean? It's starting to look like There is some kind of election that has gone astray, that has gone wrong, to make people doubt, to manipulate the votes, to manipulate the count, to manipulate the ballots. And what's his number? 606. Why is that? Why is that? Do you want to see why that is? Do you want to be in for a shock? Then his number is 606. When you take the year 2020 that we're in, if you can all see my screen here, I'm pointing to the right. The year 2020 divided by 666 gives you the number 30330. I want all of you right now to take a close look at this, because what I'm about to show you next is going to leave you speechless. I don't think any of you are ready for what I'm about to show you. But I want you to look at this number right now. Take a close look at it. The year 2020 divided by the number 666, as it shows us in Scripture, and it gives us this 30330 number. This is his number. Who is he? Ready? Do you see this? 2020 divided by 666, 30330. Do you see this, brothers and sisters? I didn't make this up. I didn't make this up. Joe Biden and his campaign chose this number to be his number to text, that you are in support of him. Are you understanding it? Do you see this 30330 right here? Just as the Bible has told us would be his number, the number of the beast. You got to understand something, brothers and sisters. The beast doesn't have to just be a person. The Antichrist could be the Antichrist system. The beast could be the beast, the Antichrist system. And isn't this what the Democrats here are representing, or at least Joe Biden and his cronies are representing? The beast system. Do you think this is an accident that he chose this number? This is no accident. The enemy knows the scriptures as we do. This is an intentional manipulation of the 666 to throw it in your face that he, in fact, is now representing the beast system that has been brought upon the earth at this time. During these end times, he is telling us he is about to unleash the beast, the Antichrist system, upon the whole earth. When I saw this, I was absolutely floored. Floored. Let me show you something else the scripture tells us. What else does it say about this number? The word, the definition of number. Watch this. To take up or take away, to expiate sin. And I said, well, I want to see exactly what that means. What does it exactly mean to expiate sin? To make to doubt and to expiate sin. You want to see what that means? Atone for guilt or sin. Their sins must be expiated by sacrifice. He's representing a beast system, and his number means the sins must be expiated by sacrifice. Isn't that what we're talking about in the end times? Those who are left behind will have to be sacrificed. They'll have to have their heads beheaded for Christ in order to go through the time of Mark. As we teach in this ministry, that the time of Mark is the next 6 years for the 6 seals that are coming upon the earth. Is this what's going on when he says to expiate sin by sacrifice? Is that what's going on here? Are we seeing what could be in the 30330 and the Joe Biden camp is telling us that they are the beast system being unleashed upon the world, and they're going to expiate the sin by sacrificing people? Brothers and sisters, make no mistake. The enemy is real. He's out there. This is their intentions. Their intention is to put the mark of the beast in you. Their intention is to behead you and kill you if you don't take that mark. It just may be unfolding in a different way than we thought. But believe me, this is not an accident. They are doing it. They are rolling out the New World Order. They are rolling out the beast, the Antichrist system. And we, brothers and sisters, are watching it unfold right in front of our faces. It is happening. Is it possible that what we are watching in this election is the rolling out of the New World Order, the beast, the Antichrist system? We are living in very troublous times, brothers and sisters. The world is changing rapidly. We can all see it. Those of us who have our eyes open and our ears open, we can see the beast system is moving very quickly upon us. Let's all keep in prayer. Let's all keep in faith, and let's all keep watch. Now, what I want to go into next is something that we taught in our last couple of videos regarding the old prophets and the covenant that they made with the Lord. For anyone that's new and hasn't seen our last 2 or 3 videos, I would encourage you to watch at least the last 2 or 3 videos, please. They're very encouraging. They're action-packed. There's a lot of information in there. It'll explain why we're pointing to this Tishri 24. It'll explain exactly the covenant that they made to the Lord. And in brief, I'll just go through it real quickly. These prophets, these major and minor prophets, they all, when they came out of captivity from Babylon, we didn't know this. A lot of people did not know this. We discovered this in this ministry, that all of these major and minor prophets, with the exception of Joshua, he's from a different time, but these major and minor prophets right here, they came out of captivity from Babylon together. And what we found in every one of these, you can go through these verses. We have them right here. Take a screenshot of it and go look up these verses. They made a pact with God because they understood. They understood the reason they kept going into captivity was because they allowed the strangers to continue living in their land. They didn't rebuild the temple. They weren't keeping the Lord's covenant. And they changed their calendars because every time they would go into captivity, they would use the calendar of the people who took them into captivity. They would use other calendars other than the one that the Lord set up for them. And that calendar rightfully is the Enoch calendar that the Lord set up for them to use. So what did they do? When they came out of captivity, and you can go read these verses, when they came out of captivity together, they made this covenant with the Lord, and they made that covenant on the 24th of Tishri. We are in the month of Tishri, the 7th month. We are in that month right now. And what was their covenant that they made to the Lord? And you can read that in Nehemiah 9. He lists out the covenant that they made. And he says to remove the strangers from the land. They promised the Lord in their covenant that they would remove the strangers from their land. They would restore and rebuild the temple of the Lord. Their covenant was to keep his covenant. They promised him that they're going to keep his covenant from now on. And they also promised to reinstate the Enoch calendar. So if any of you have missed this from our last videos, please, I encourage you to go and watch those videos. There's some excellent connections and excellent teachings going on. And I want you all to clearly see what we're teaching. Just in brief, I'm going to go over just 1 or 2 things with you so you can see it. And then I'm going to show you where we are today and where we are on our Enoch calendar, just so you can all get an understanding. So when you go to Nehemiah 9:1, what do we have? What's he saying here? The date's right here. Now in the 24th day of this month. Well, what month is he talking about? Well, when you go prior in Nehemiah 8, what's he talking about? And Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation of the men and women that could hear with understanding upon the first day of the 7th month. So this whole story is beginning in the 7th month, Tishri, the month that we're in now. And this is Nehemiah and Ezra and all those prophets I was showing you. They're here right now. And what's happened, they've come out of captivity. They've gathered together. And now Ezra's going to read the law of Moses before all the congregation, before all the people. He's going to start reading the book of Moses and the laws. And he begins on the first day of the 7th month, which began 3 weeks ago. We're in the 7th month now. And so in Nehemiah 9, he's telling us that now in the 24th day of the month, they were still fasting. And they decided to separate themselves from all the strangers in the land. They realized we need to separate ourselves. So when you read the rest of this chapter, and I encourage all of you to read it, you'll see they made a covenant. And these are all the promises that they're making to the Lord. And who signed this covenant? We showed this in our last few videos. All these people signed the covenant. They sealed the covenant. Nehemiah, Azariah, Jeremiah, Daniel was even there too. Daniel, Obadiah, Baruch. All of the major and minor prophets were there, and they sealed this covenant. So I want all of you to understand that we are looking at this month, and we're still looking at this month still. And we're going to show you why. We're going to show you why we're still looking at this. Because there's something important in Scripture that I don't want anyone to forget of one of the main reasons why we're looking at this. Because when we go into all of these major and minor prophets, what we find is they're all telling the same story. You can go into any one of these major and minor prophets, and they're telling the same story about this covenant. Why? Because they were all there, including Daniel. All of these major and minor prophet stories are all talking about the same story that occurred during the month of Tishri, and the fasting and mourning that they did before the Lord, and the new covenant they made unto the Lord. We are not giving up because we know we are still in the month of Tishri. And we're going to show you why on our Enoch calendar that we're still here, and this event of the escape, some of you call it the rapture, it's still in play, and we're going to show you why. But let me show you why we're still pointing to this. Because what does it say in Zechariah 7:5? And by the way, Zechariah was there. Zechariah was one of the ones that signed that covenant with the Lord. And what does Zechariah tell us? I'll show you what he says. Zechariah says in 7:5, speak unto all the people of the land and to the priests, saying, when ye fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years, did you at all fast unto me, even to me? Let's back up a second. We've passed the 5th month. We're in the 7th month, and he's talking about those 70 years. Well, we know we are coming to the conclusion of the 70 years that the Lord could be talking about when it comes to Tishri 24. And if you need to understand more about that, please, like I said, go to our last couple of videos. We explain this in great depth, but I'll just give you a quick refresher. We believe that the Lord is counting 70 years from Tishri 24, 70 years later, and going to the next 70th Tishri 24. We believe these 70 years will be over with when we've come to Tishri 24. The 7th month, 24th date, and then the 70 years will be completed. And so now we're going to show you why we believe we can still be in that time frame. But first, let me show you something real quick, because I want everyone to understand why. This is one of the reasons, because this is clearly telling us by the 7th month, at the end of the 70 years, destruction comes upon Israel and Jerusalem. And we're going to show you something else. So this is pointing to the 7th month, right around the 24th day of the month. But now let's show you something else. Why do we keep saying that we're insisting that it's still now, that we are in this time frame? Because when you go to John 7, it's the story of the Feasts of Booths. And it's the story where the Jews were going up to tabernacles for the feast, but Jesus himself said, you go, this is your time, my time hasn't come. And why do we say that? because the Lord knew that their calendar would be off. So he basically, what he's saying is, you go celebrate on your calendar, you go do that, I'll meet you guys later. And if you read this story, that's kind of how it goes. The Lord Jesus Christ meets them up there later. And what happens? What ends up happening when he finally comes out? He waits until the last day of Tabernacles, and he says, in the last day of that great day of the feast, Jesus stood crying, saying, if any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. And he that believeth on me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. Shall flow rivers of living water. And we're going to get back to this water a little bit later on, but he's telling us it's living water. And we're going to show you later on in this teaching where we're going to show you that part of this time frame we're in is not referring to living waters. It's referring to something else. So could it be that what's going on here is Jesus is standing up at the end of this Tabernacles on Tishri 24 and bringing in his harvest, bringing in his flock, bringing in his sheep, telling them, come to me if you thirst, and out of your belly is going to flow the living waters. And I want you to remember this when Amish does his part, because we're going to show you the opposite of this living water. He's going to show you what happens with the raven. But right now, Jesus is talking about the living waters that he's offering people. And this story I'm showing you right now is the end of Tabernacles. It's coming to its conclusion. And some of you may say, well, we finished Tabernacles. Yes, we finished Tabernacles. But let us show you on our calendar why this may be another 7-day story that hasn't quite concluded just yet. And we're going to show that to you. But let me show you why else we're pointing to this time frame. So this is the second reason we're pointing to this time frame. The first reason I showed you in Zechariah 7:5 was for the 7th month and the 70 years. And now we have this story here in John where it's also pointing to Tabernacles. What does Luke point us to? When we go to Luke 9, he talks about, when we go to Luke 9:10, he feeds the 5,000. And we've done a prior teaching on this. So please look at our other videos and you'll see the teaching we've done on this, where the Lord takes them to a place called Bethsaida. And we know in Aramaic, we've taught this before, Bethsaida means the house of the great fisherman. The Lord is taking these people to the house of the great fisherman. And please go see our other videos that we've taught this on, and you'll see a more extended study on this. But this event is occurring during Tabernacles, and we're going to show you. When you go to the Transfiguration story, it's the same thing. It says, and it came to pass about in 8 days that the Lord took them up to the mountain, and he was transfigured, and his raiment was white and glistening. He's transfigured now. He went from the flesh to the spirit. And again, it talks about Peter being the sleeping church were left behind. And when is this happening? Tabernacles. Do you see it? Tabernacles. And so we find this story also in Mark and Matthew, the Transfiguration story. And it's similar. There's differences, because there's differences in the Gospels, but they're all happening at Tabernacles. And the same thing with the fish stories that we've talked about and we taught about. They're all happening at Tabernacles. Brothers and sisters, what we're proposing to you is that we still believe that what we are uncovering through all the old major and minor prophets that I just showed you, they're all pointing to the 7th month, 24th day. When then we get into the New Testament, what are they showing us? And when we're showing it to you right now. They're all pointing to the 7th month, the end of Tabernacles. So it appears that when we go through the Old Testament and the New Testament, the event we're still looking for should occur during the 7th month. And that's why we keep pointing to this. So let me show you something on our calendar that we've made. And we're going to go forward with this study and get to the point of where we are right now. So let me show you where we've been, and let's show you where we are. When we started this journey together, brothers and sisters, where did we start off? And again, this is in some of our prior teachings, but we showed you that between the evening of June 7th and June 8th, what's happened? The Daniel 9:2 prophecy has begun and happened. And this is the exact date where the Noah story, Genesis 7:11, starts, because Noah gave us this date. We didn't make this date up. Noah gave us the second month, 17th day. Going from evening of June 7th to the evening of June 8th, it's the same day the Daniel 9:2 prophecy occurred. And we taught this in our other videos. And what's the Daniel 9:2 prophecy? Where Jerusalem would complete its 52 years. And we have this on our calendar over here. I have a write-up on it, and some of you have seen it in our prior videos. But Jerusalem was restored back to Israel in 1967 on June 7th. And when you read Daniel 9:2, he talks about the books of Jeremiah being the number of years. And if you know the books of Jeremiah are 52, so it's 52 years. When you add 52 years to 1967, it brings you to June 7th, 2019. But that's the beginning of 52 years. Daniel talks about the completion of the 52 years. So when is the 52 years completed? June 7th, 2020. The 52 years, the Daniel 9 prophecy, in fact, occurred, and we are all living witnesses that Jerusalem did, in fact, complete 52 years on June 7th, 2020, and the Daniel 9:2 prophecy did take place. So starting from this date, we know prophecy is occurring. And that's why we built our calendar on the Enoch calendar. So remember, this is the moon count of the calendar, and this is the solar count. And we're going to get into that in just a second. And then we overlaid the Noah story onto this calendar. Why? Because we know that Noah only had his grandfather's calendar, the Enoch calendar. And let's go back to this for those brothers and sisters who didn't see some of our prior videos. I'm going to just go over this real quickly. The Enoch calendar is based on two things. It's based on the moon count, which is the lunar count, and it's based on the solar count, the sun count. So technically, the Enoch calendar is two calendars in one. You have the days that account for the 354 days of the moon, and then you have the count of the 364 days of the sun. And when we laid out the story of Noah, we laid out the story of Noah according to the sun count, which is absolutely correct, because when you go down the calendar, the days that Noah gave us fall on the solar count of the calendar. So we know we're in that timeline. We know we're in the correct timeline. And so where are we now? Let's just get down to the bottom line of where are we right now with all of this. So when we come down, and you probably all saw this in our last few videos, we were pointing at these dates, because Enoch gives us this day 177, and he tells us that after we've passed the 177th day, we are in the 7th month. And that's what this is. Tishri 1, the 7th month, the first day of the 7th month. So we know our calendar is calibrated correctly. When we got to the 177th day, we knew for a fact that October 17th is Tishri 1, the very first day of the 7th month. And that was Rosh Hashanah. And we went through Tishri 10, which was the Day of Atonement. And then we went through Halloween, October 31st, which we know was the 15th day, which is the Day of Tabernacles. But Tabernacles is an 8-day event with a double 8 date. And so where is all of that? What's happened? Let's take a closer look at this. Let's see, where are we right now? Well, we had this is the interesting part. I want to show everybody this real quick. November 3rd, right here that I'm pointing to, was the day of the United States elections. And then in the middle of that night, everything went haywire. They stopped the election. They stopped counting votes. Craziness went on. And then by Wednesday, the next morning, November 4th, it all just broke loose. There was just chaos happening all over the United States and all over the world about the elections. And what day did that fall on? The 150th day of the Noah story. Noah gave us this date. Are the waters upon the earth now? We're going to get into these teachings. You're going to see what's going on. And then what happened on November 7th? the eighth day, the great eighth day that I was showing you guys in John 7, when Christ stood up and said, all those who thirst for me, come to me for living waters. That was this date, November 7th. He's calling out to the bride of Christ. He's calling out for all the sheep that could hear his name, that hear his voice, that know who he is. We are those sheep. We are the bride of Christ. We understand who Jesus Christ is. We know what time frame we're in. We hear our shepherd's voice. He is our great shepherd. He marked us with his sacrificial blood, his sacred blood. We are his. He chose us. And this is the great eighth day in that story in John 7 that I just read to you, where he cries out to his bride. He cries out to his chosen and says, come follow me, all those who thirst for the living water. Remember what I just said, the living water. The ark rested on this date. Noah gave us this date. When you go to Genesis 8:4, right here, Genesis 8:4, Noah gave us the date, 7th month, 17th day. This is a date from the Bible. Noah gave us this date as the date the ark rested. The same day Jesus Christ cries out to his bride, cries out to his sheep. It's the same day. And what did we teach everybody? Because when you go to this in Genesis 8, it also says on that day what happens? The raven was released upon the earth. The raven was released upon the earth on this date that Noah gave us. I want that to sink in, because Amish is going to do an outstanding teaching. He's going to further go into this. What I'm teaching you now, he's going to go into it in a little bit more depth than I'm going into. It's astounding what you're going to see Amish teach you. So we believed, and we still believe, that it's possible that this did happen. You know, we all expect the escape and the rapture, whatever you want to call it. We have certain expectations of it, but is it possible that it's playing out just slightly different than we imagine it would play out? With all things, you know, God can do all things that are possible. It's very possible that it's going to play out just a little bit slightly different than we thought it would play out. And we're going to show that to you. So on this date, what happened on November 7th? What happened on November 7th? Want me to show you again? What happened on November 7th? Who came out? Who came out to the whole world and says he's the new king of America? This guy. The beast with his number, the number of his name. Joe Biden's number, the beast system number. What happened on November 7th, brothers and sisters? Do you remember what happened on November 7th? He stood in front of the whole world and declared himself the raven, the Antichrist system. We didn't make this up. When you go to Genesis 8 and read this verse that Noah gave us this date, the raven is released on this date, November 7th, which is the 7th month, 17th day of the month, that Noah gave us this date. The raven, the Antichrist system, the Joe Bidens, the beast and his number stood in front of the whole world and declared himself president by himself. There's been, as I told you in the beginning of this video, there's been no certification of the election. Not one single state, not one single government within the United States has certified the election. But he's now declared himself to be the president. Could it be that that's what we were all watching? The raven, the Antichrist system being released upon the earth? The bad waters, and Amish is going to get into that? Could it be? Could it be that that's what we all witnessed? And is it possible that we are still on the timeline we're looking for? What we taught in our last videos is we were looking for this date on the lunar count, 7th month, 24th day. Remember the 24th day of Tishri I was teaching everybody about? The hidden fast? This date, the covenant date? What if, brothers and sisters, is it possible we were looking at the wrong part of the Enoch calendar? Remember the Enoch calendar has two parts, the lunar part for the moon, and then the solar part. What if we needed to look at date, the 7th month, 24th day, which is November 14th coming up? What if we needed to look at the solar count, which is what? 7 days from the date we were looking at. And why is that important? It's exactly 7 days. Why is that important? Let me show you why. I'm going to just briefly go over this because Amish is going to go into greater detail, and I would like him to do his part and do that. Here it is. The ark, the windows of the ark were open, and what happened? And the raven went forth to and fro. And then he also sent forth a dove. But the dove returned back when? Yet 7 days. Yet other 7 days. This dove returned back.
Hey, Charles, why don't you let me get into this? Because this is really kind of the meat of what I was going to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that. I just went over it briefly.
All right.
So is it possible? Is it possible that what we're looking at is this 7 day count that we had to wait for? And this may be the correct Tishri 24 that we are looking at on November 14th, which is 7 days away. Is it possible? We are looking at this, and we are looking at it very closely right now, because it is very possible that what we saw happen was the raven, the Antichrist spirit, going out upon the earth. And then 7 days later, the dove returns. And it just happens to be the 24th of Tishri, the date we've been looking at. It's very possible that that's exactly what could be happening right now. So with that, I just want everyone to hold tight, to keep in prayer, to keep the faith, to be vigilant, and to edify one another, to encourage one another, to pray with your family, to pray with your friends, to understand that we are all going through this together. And we encourage everyone that wants to participate and to help. We encourage you to participate, to join Discord, to share scripture with one another, to encourage one another to keep the faith, keep in prayer, and by all means, keep watch, because we believe we are coming upon the date that we are looking for. I want you all to take what we've taught you today with great diligence and understanding, and do your own research on it.
Hey, Charles, the video's not over yet, so just so you folks know.
I would like everyone to edify one another and to keep watch, like I said. God bless each and every one of you and your beloved families. We're going to have Amish come on next. He's going to pick up kind of where I left off here with this Genesis 8 story. And take it away, Amish.
All right. I'm going to try to remember what I was going to talk about. It's been a while. It's hard to kind of stay queued up, but I'm going to try to take you through a couple of things. Charles, if you could stop sharing so I could share. There's a couple of things I want to go over. And I don't have any notes on this or any cribs. I'm going to try to do this from memory. Before I get started, though, let me make a couple of corrections. In the last video that we put out, where I went over the end time understanding, I want to make a couple of corrections. When I was talking about the transfiguration, that James that is at the transfiguration is not the brother of Jesus. Now, Jesus did have a brother named James, but that isn't the James that was there. So I wanted to make that correction. And there was a brother that reached out and brought that to my attention, and he's absolutely right, and I appreciate that. Let's talk about the name of Christ. So I had some people reach out and said I was a Pharisee for being so legalistic that I would use the name of Yahushua. And so I'm not sure how that actually makes me a Pharisee, because I found a study and just so that you know, and this was another brother that brought this to my, well, he didn't bring it to my attention, he reminded me of it, but The Hebrew name of Christ is actually Yeshua. The Greek name of Christ is Yahushua. What I was pointing out is that even in the English translation, the name of Christ in the original King James Bible was not Jesus, it was Isis. Okay? But, you know, I won't hold it against you if you use that name, if you don't hold it against me that I use the Greek name or the Hebrew name. But I don't think we should be coming at against each other for, you know, doing in-depth study. So I just wanted to get that out. One more thing, and Charles just went through it in some detail that I did not include in the patterns of understanding for the end time, was the inclusion of Jeremiah's 52 years as 52 books, where Daniel says, I understood by the books of Daniel the years. And there's 52 chapters. We assume that means 52 books or scrolls of Jeremiah. And Jamie did a wonderful teaching about how when we dig into that further and find the 62
Listen up, UK. It's time to show local business some love. You can, everyone can. Just leave a Google review. Because Google reviews do wonders for places like this. Support local businesses you love with a little help from Google.
Dios mío. Ay, Dios Padre Santo. No, estuviera bien, no, estuviera yo en el mundo. Oye, me va a matar. Alguien quiere que te salga el dedo uno ahí. Ey, quírense de ahí, que eso se puede caer. Quírense de ahí. Esta corriente ahora se ve como más fuerte, man. Se está aumentando el agua, man. Se llevó una señora, gracias a Dios, allá va la señora. Se la arrastró como 50 metros. No más que el mismo agua la echó a la orilla. Fue normal que la corriente la echó a la orilla, porque donde cae la cuneta la jode toda.
Se descuida y chica la cuneta esa.
No, y lo que falta.
in his fat bottom.
You have to go back in time. You have to look a little deeper. To this interview from 1984, I'm going to leave you with some words from Malcolm X. This was recorded in 1963.
The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leader, who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gains, token progress.
Now that you heard what Malcolm X has to say about this situation, let's take a look at this 1984 interview with Yuri Besmanov. He was a defector from the KGB, and he has some insights as to what's going on today. Check this out.
Yuri Alexandrovich Besmanov. Mr. Besmanov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in the United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect.
Why do you get dressed early in the morning in clothes that you buy just for work? Fighting through traffic jams in a car you're still paying for in order to get to a job that...
What did you think about that? Was it accurate? Does it make sense now? If you haven't already done so, please leave a comment below and let us know what you think. And don't forget to hit that like button. And please share this video with everybody you know. Imagine a world where nothing is random, and major events that happen worldwide were written down hundreds of years ago. What you're about to hear was recorded in 1967, and it perfectly describes the world we live in today.
What was the secret? the all-seeing eye, symbols of the guardians of the treasure.
Recorded by Myron C. Fagan, a famous Hollywood writer who rose through the ranks of the Hollywood elite, uncovering some nasty secrets along the way. He made it his life's work to expose the darkness that he personally saw with his own two eyes. This recording is a culmination of his life's work, and through a historical lens, he reveals what's been hiding in the shadows for hundreds of years. What you're about to hear is not conspiracy theory, rather is documented historical fact that holds up to the most rigid scrutiny. And without further ado, I bring you the Illuminati and the Council on Foreign Relations.
The question of how and why the Illuminati is the crux of the great conspiracy to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and the enslavement of the American people within a UN one-world dictatorship is a complete and unknown mystery to the vast majority of the American people. The reason for this unawareness of the frightening danger to our country and to the entire free world is simple. The masterminds behind this great conspiracy have absolute control of all of our mass communications media, especially television, the radio, the press, and Hollywood.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to two American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
We all know that our State Department, the Pentagon, and the White House have brazenly proclaimed that they have the right and the power to manage the news, to tell us not the truth, but what they want us to believe. They have seized that power on orders from their masters of the great conspiracy. And the objective is to brainwash the people into accepting the phony peace bait to transform the United States into an enslaved unit of the United Nations one world government. Let me clarify the meaning of the expression, "He is a liberal." The enemy, meaning the one world conspirators, have seized upon that word liberal as a cover-up for their activities. It sounds so innocent and so humanitarian to be liberal.
I'm Nadeem Sarwar. I'm the founder and CEO of Flow Digital Pharmacy. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and as a result, I had to go on a repeat prescription.
This satanic plot was launched back in the 1760s when it first came into existence under the name of the Illuminati. This Illuminati was organized by one Adam Weishaupt, born a Jew, who was converted to Catholicism and became a Catholic priest, and then, at the behest of the then newly organized House of Rothschild, defected and organized the Illuminati. Naturally, the Rothschilds financed that operation. And every war since then, beginning with the French Revolution, has been promoted by the Illuminati, operating under various names and guises. I say under various names and guises because after the Illuminati was exposed and became too notorious, Weishaupt and his co-conspirators began to operate under various other names. In the United States, immediately after World War I, they set up what they called the Council on Foreign Relations, commonly referred to as the CFR. And this CFR is actually the Illuminati in the United States. Perhaps the most vital directive in Weishaupt's plan was to obtain absolute control of the press, at that time the only mass communications media, to distribute information to the public, so that all news and information could be slanted, so that the masses could be convinced that a one-world government is the only solution to our many and varied problems. Now do you know who owns and controls our mass communications media? I'll tell you, practically all the movie lots in Hollywood is owned by the Lehmans, Kuhn, Loeb and Company, Goldman Sachs, and other internationalist bankers. All the national radio and TV channels in the nation are owned and controlled by those same internationalist bankers. The same is true of every chain of metropolitan newspapers and magazines, also of the press wire services, such as Associated Press, United Press International, etc. The supposed heads of all those media are merely the fronts for the internationalist bankers, who in turn compose the hierarchy of the CFR, today's Illuminati in America. Now can you understand why the Pentagon's press agent Sylvester so brazenly proclaimed that the government has the right to lie to the people? What he really meant was that our CFR-controlled government had the power to lie to and be believed by the brainwashed American people. And let's again go back to the first days of the Illuminati. In 1785, the Bavarian government outlawed the Illuminati and closed the lodges of the Grand Orient. In 1786, they published all the details of the conspiracy. The English title of that publication is The Original Writings of the Order and Sect of the Illuminati. Copies of the entire conspiracy were sent to all the heads of church and state in Europe. But the power of the Illuminati, which was actually the power of the Rothschilds, was so great that this warning was ignored. Nevertheless, Illuminati became a dirty word, and it went underground. At the same time, Weishaupt ordered Illuminists to infiltrate into the lodges of Blue Masonry and form their own secret societies within all secret societies. Only Masons who proved themselves internationalists and those whose conduct proved they had defected from God were initiated into the Illuminati. Thenceforth, the conspirators donned the cloak of philanthropy and humanitarianism to conceal their revolutionary and subversive activities, and that all that secrecy emphasizes the power of the masterminds of the Illuminati to prevent such terrible events of history from being taught in our schools. In 1834, the Italian revolutionary leader Giuseppe Mazzini was selected by the Illuminati to direct their revolutionary program throughout the world. He served in that capacity until he died in 1872. But some years before he died, Mazzini had enticed an American general named Albert Pike into the Illuminati. Pike was fascinated by the idea of a one-world government, and ultimately he became the head of this Luciferian conspiracy. Between 1859 and 1871, he, Pike, worked out a military blueprint for 3 world wars and various revolutions throughout the world, which he considered would forward the conspiracy to its final stage in the 20th century. Again, I remind that these conspirators were never concerned with immediate success. They always operated on a long-range view. Pike did most of his work in his home in Little Rock, Arkansas. But a few years later, when the Illuminati's lodges of the Grand Orient became suspect and repudiated because of Mazzini's revolutionary activities in Europe, Pike organized what he called the New and Reformed Palladian Rite. He set up 3 Supreme Councils, one in Charleston, South Carolina, one in Rome, Italy, and the third in Berlin, Germany. he had Mazzini establish 23 subordinate councils in strategic locations throughout the world. These have been the secret headquarters of the world revolutionary movement ever since. Long before Marconi invented radio, the scientists in the Illuminati had found the means for Pike and the heads of his councils to communicate secretly. It was the discovery of that secret that enabled intelligence officers to understand how apparently unrelated incidents, one such as the assassination of an Austrian prince at Sarajevo, took place simultaneously throughout the world, which developed into a war or a revolution. Pike's plan was as simple as it has proved effective. It called for communism, Nazism, political Zionism, and other international movements be organized and used to foment 3 global world wars and at least 2 major revolutions. The First World War was to be fought so as to enable the Illuminati to destroy Tsarism in Russia, as vowed by Rothschild after the Tsar had torpedoed his scheme at the Congress in Vienna, and to transform Russia into a stronghold of atheistic communism. The differences stirred up by agents of the Illuminati between the British and German empires were to be used to foment this war. After the war would be ended, communism was to be built up and used to destroy other governments and weaken religions. World War II, when and if necessary, was to be fomented by using the controversies between fascists and political Zionists. During this World War II, international communism was to be built up until it equaled in strength that of united Christendom. When it reached that point, it was to be contained and kept in check until required for the final social cataclysm. As we know now, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin put that exact policy into effect, and Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Johnson continued that same exact policy. World War III is to be fomented by using the so-called controversies the agents of the Illuminati, operating under whatever new name, are now stirring up between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Muslim world. That war is to be directed in such a manner that all of Islam and political Zionism, Israel, will destroy each other, while at the same time the remaining nations, once more divided on this issue, will be forced to fight themselves into a state of complete exhaustion, physically, mentally, spiritually, and economically. Now, can any thinking person doubt that the intrigue now going on in the Near, Middle, and Far East is designed to accomplish that satanic objective? Pike himself foretold all this in a statement he made to Mazzini on August 15, 1871. Pike stated that after World War III is ended, those who will inspire to undisputed world domination will provoke the greatest social cataclysm the world has ever known. Quoting his own words, taken from the letter he wrote to Mazzini, and which letter is now catalogued in the British Museum in London, England, he said, "We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a great social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to all nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery and of most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the people forced to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitudes disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will be from that moment on without direction and leadership, and anxious for an ideal but without knowledge where to send its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view, a manifestation which will result from a general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. When Mazzini died in 1872, Pike made another Italian revolutionary leader named Adrian Lemmy his successor. Lemmy, in turn, was succeeded by Lenin and Trotsky, then by Stalin. The revolutionary activities of all those men were financed by British, French, German, and American international bankers, all of them dominated by the House of Rothschild. We are supposed to believe that the international bankers of today, like the money changers of Christ's day, are only the tools or agents of the great conspiracy, but actually they are the masterminds behind all of it. While the general public has been brainwashed by all the mass communications media into believing that communism is a movement of the so-called workers, the actual fact is that both British and American intelligence officers have authentic documentary evidence that international liberals operating through their international banking houses, particularly the House of Rothschild, have financed both sides in every war and revolution since 1776. Those who today comprise the conspiracy, the CFR in the United States, direct our governments, whom they hold in usury through such methods as the Federal Reserve System in America, to fight wars such as Vietnam, created by the United Nations, so as to further Pike's Illuminati plans to bring the world to that stage of the conspiracy when atheistic communism and the whole of Christianity can be forced into an all-out Third World War within each remaining nation, as well as on an international scale. Now let me show you how our federal government and the American people have been sucked into the one-world takeover plot of the Illuminati Great Conspiracy. And always bear in mind that the United Nations was created to become the housing for that one-world so-called liberal conspiracy. The real foundations of the plot for the takeover of the United States were laid during the period of our Civil War. Not that Weishaupt and the earlier masterminds had ever overlooked the New World. Weishaupt had his agents planted over here as far back as the Revolutionary War. But George Washington was more than a match for them. It was during the Civil War that the conspirators launched their first concrete efforts. We know that Judah Benjamin, chief advisor of Jefferson Davis, was a Rothschild agent. We also know that there were Rothschild agents planted in Abraham Lincoln's cabinet who tried to sell him into a financial dealing with the House of Rothschild. But old Abe saw through the scheme and bluntly rejected it, thereby incurring the undying enmity of the Rothschilds. Investigation of the assassination of Lincoln revealed that the assassin, Booth, was a member of a secret conspiratorial group. Because there were a number of highly important government officials involved, the name of the group was never revealed, and it became a mystery, exactly as the assassination of Jack Kennedy still is a mystery. Anyway, the ending of the Civil War destroyed, temporarily, all chances of the House of Rothschild to get a clutch on our money system, such as they had acquired in Britain and other nations in Europe. I say temporarily because the Rothschilds and the masterminds of the conspiracy never quit. So they had to start from scratch, but they lost no time in getting started. Shortly after the Civil War, a young immigrant who called himself Jacob H. Schiff arrived in New York. Jacob was a young man with a mission for the House of Rothschild. Jacob was the son of a rabbi, born in one of Rothschild's houses in Frankfurt, Germany. I won't go deeply into his background. The important point is that Rothschild recognized in him not only a potential money wizard, but more important, he also saw the latent Machiavellian qualities in Jacob that could, as it did, make him an invaluable functionary in the great one-world conspiracy. After a comparatively brief training period in the Rothschilds' London bank, Jacob left for America with instructions to buy into a banking house, which was to be the springboard to acquire control of the money system of the United States. Actually, Jacob came here to carry out 4 specific assignments. Number 1, and most important, was to acquire control of America's money system. Number 2, find desirable men who, for a price, would be willing to serve as stooges for the great conspiracy and promote them into high places in our federal government, our Congress, in the U.S. Supreme Court, and all federal agencies. Number 3, create minority group strife throughout the nations, particularly between whites and blacks. Number 4, create a movement to destroy religion in the United States, but Christianity to be the chief target. The headquarters of the great conspiracy in the late 1700s was in Frankfurt, Germany, where the House of Rothschild had been established by Mayer Anschelm, who adopted the Rothschild name and linked together other international financiers who had literally sold their souls to the devil. After the Bavarian government's exposure in 1786, the conspirators moved their headquarters to Switzerland, then to London. Since World War II, after Jacob Schiff, the Rothschilds' boy in America, died, the headquarters of the American branch has been in the Harold Pratt Building, New York, and the Rockefellers, originally protégés of Schiff, have taken over the manipulation of finances in America for the Illuminati. In the final phases of the conspiracy, the one-world government will consist of the king dictator, head of the United Nations, the CFR, and a few billionaires, economists, and scientists who have proved their devotion to the great conspiracy. All others are to be integrated into a vast conglomeration of mongrelized humanity, actually slaves.
What you just heard was a very small piece of that recording. The full recording is well over 2 hours in length.
Proved their devotion to the great conspiracy. All others are to be integrated into a vast conglomeration of mongrelized humanity, actually slaves.
What you just heard was a very small piece of that recording. The full recording is well over 2 hours in length and is widely available online. Just Google Myron Fagan CFR or Myron Fagan Illuminati and you can find several versions of it. Please leave a comment below and tell us what you think about this. And also, don't forget to hit that like button. Until next time, thank you all for watching. God bless you all.
Every year, CrowdStrike produces our annual Global Threat Report, and essentially what it is a summation of the activity that we saw the year prior.
They were 9-10 feet tall entities, and they told him that they were preparing for an intergalactic war with God, and that they were going to win. What happened was they opened up this portal, they created a rift.
14 years ago, I released a movie film which brought great shame to Kazakhstan. But now I was instructed to return to Yankee Land to carry out secret mission. I go to America! What do you say? No, it's not me. Come back! People may recognize my face. I would need disguises. This man is sex criminal? No, no sex criminal. I will take this to be a fat like American man. Yeah? This is a good one. Where is his crumb? What is problem, officer?
got somebody that's strapped to the top of your car. You need to sit in that passenger seat, boss.
Only men and bears are allowed inside car. I'm here to give my daughter as a gift to someone close to the throne. I need dress with real sexy peels.
This is a bag that just goes over the dress.
They're nice.
I really like this.
Let us present Sandra Jessica Parker Drummond.
I want this one with the baby on it. I have a baby inside me.
Can you take it out?
No, we cannot. That's not what we do here.
I feel bad because I was the one who put the baby in her. Did you ever put one in your daughter?
No, I did not.
Where is everybody?
They're wanting everybody to quarantine so they don't spread this virus.
Could I stay in your home? I hope quarantine never ends. What is more dangerous, this virus or the Democrat?
Democrats.
Democrats.
It's killing some of the virus.
No, you can't see the virus.
No, it's still there.
If you think you see a virus go like that.
This makes the virus sleepy. And then when it's sleeping...
Your daddy has a lot to learn.
My daddy is the smartest person in the whole flat world.
While the risk of coronavirus remains low, as the president said yesterday, we're ready for anything.
Michael Penis, I brought the girl for you. Borat's subsequent movie film. You fist me. Now I fist you?
All right, there you
What
go.
do you prefer? You fist me or I fist you?
Same time.
Fist each other.
There you go.
They were 9, 10 feet tall entities, and they told him that they were preparing for an intergalactic war with God, and that they were going to win. What happened was they opened up this portal, they created a rift, and entities began to come through. Not just this Whore of Babylon being birthed, but other entities. The federal government at the highest levels have known that these are not space aliens, that these are entities coming from another dimension.
My name is Wes Fall, and I am part of Fall Brothers Productions and Fourth Watch Films with Justin Fall and with Chad Riley. And the Lord just directed our steps into kind of a full circle. We both went to film school, Justin and I did, years ago, and we had to pay bills doing other things, but the Lord brought us back to making films. And so it's been a crazy ride, but I'm just glad to be here and doing what the Lord's called us to do.
My name is Justin Fall. And my background is in film production. I'm a film student from the Art Institute of Atlanta, and I'm also a career researcher. My main focus in life is to be able to wake up the church. I want to be able to better equip the church, and I want them to understand that the times they're going to be coming upon the face of this earth, which we are approaching, no one would deny that crazy prophecies are being fulfilled right now. Things that 100 years ago, the average Christian would not have understood the scripture the way that they would today based on the unfolding of events that we're seeing. And so as a career researcher, my ministry is all about equipping the saints for the last days, equipping the tribulation saints, even if you want to use that language, but also to join the conversation of the world. I think that Christians need to be able to join the conversation about the paranormal, about the crazy topics. We need to join that conversation and give a biblical answer that will cause the world to want to draw near unto Christ.
We looked at this alien question. You can go back to even the past election in 2016. Hillary was talking about how if she won, she was going to...
Open sesame. And let's unleash some good upon the world with the lure pack Butterbox.
We hear you. The real riders out there, the riders watching the clock, waiting for post-work trails, the young at heart who defy any thoughts of taking it easy, the weekend explorers wanting to max out their adventures, and the everyday heroes who look for the roads less traveled. Through evolution, we've redefined e-bike systems, raising the benchmark again. It's time to ride the revolution. Shimano EP8. Ride the revolution.
Open the vault and get into basically exposing what the UFOs are and the alien question. We wanted to look at it in the biblical aspect of it and to try to break down, what are we dealing with here? Because the world does have this answer, but as we found out, so does the Bible.
Higher Entities, it's a film that deals with a very much political, paranormal conspiracy. We made Higher Entities for a lot of different reasons. The timing of Higher Entities could not have been better because we're dealing with a film that it digs deep into these areas of government alien entity connections. Now, why is that important? Because we're living in a time where we understand that the Antichrist is coming on the face of the earth. There will be an Antichrist. And we know that he has fallen angels that are going to be working with him. He's going to have a demonic army. He's going to have all types of lying signs and wonders. The Bible talks about these lying signs and wonders. And if it were possible, the elect would be deceived by his cunning. I believe the aliens in the last days, which we don't really believe them to be space aliens, and we'll get into that here in a few minutes, but I believe that the alien entities, the higher entities, they will likely use some type of a cataclysmic event, something major, whether it's real or synthetic. We know about Project Bluebeam. Mm-hmm. We know about technology where they can project an image in the sky.
There's going to be things that come upon this earth that are going to cause men's hearts to fail them. And so, like right now, everybody is consumed with this Western civilization of idea of going to work and coming home and watching the ball game and getting married, 2.5 kids, dog and a cat, that whole deal. There's no room for supernaturalism there. But when that does take place, it's going to flip the world on its head. And so I think that this is kind of like we've already seen like a soft disclosure take place. And I think it's prepping the world for that. But even more so, I believe that it's tying into what the Bible says is going to take place. And ultimately, it's going to be pointing the world towards an Antichrist, towards a false prophet promoting that Antichrist. He's going to be able to call fire down from heaven. It's going to be some supernatural feats taking place in the eyes of men. And so if the world doesn't have a supernatural worldview, that's going to give it to them. I think that all this is going to culminate pointing people to this so-called messianic figure that's going to be in the place of Christ. And for the church, the big thing on that end of things is that if they don't have a supernatural worldview, if they see this coming upon the world, if just specifically in Matthew 24, people claiming to be anointed, people claiming to be Messiah, which is just another word for anointed, and underneath that, anointed for an office, they're going to be coming in the name of Jesus. So they get their foot inside the church doors, and they're saying they're anointed, and they're going to be doing crazy lying signs and wonders. And so that would be believing in what they see and what they experience versus having faith in God and His Word.
No, Jesus said that there's coming a time where they're going to say to Him, "Lord, Lord, I did all this good stuff in Your name." The thing that gets my attention there is that he mentioned some specifics like casting out demons in Your name. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a major denomination right now that they make their their big deal on casting out demons. There's a couple of them, actually. There's going to be people that think they're operating in spiritual gifts, yet Jesus is going to say, I never knew you. But what we're talking about with this alien idea, the aliens are going to be giving different types of experiences to people. This is what people have to understand. The experiences have to be tested with Scripture. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, we're going to accept them because they're supernatural experiences, whether it's a supernatural healing, whether it's some type of a prophetic event where they speak a word of knowledge or they know something about your history, whatever it may be. The aliens could have a cure for cancer. The aliens. These higher entities are coming from a different place than us. They're not earthborn. The only ones that could be earthborn would be the demons, which came through the line of the Nephilim. And obviously that's a little bit of a different scenario. Mm-hmm. It ties in together. But with higher entities, we're dealing with, there is a group that we tracked in this film called the Collins Elite. And the idea was trying to answer the question, were there events in history where the American government was working with entities? That was kind of the beginning of this research. And if so, what happened? Can we validate this? What came of that? But also, were there factions in the government who stood up against these things? That was the premise of this film. And we started off by talking about a group known as the Collins Elite. Now, let's just go back in time. There was an event that took place back in the late 40s known as the Babylon Working Ritual. Now, this was a ritual that was carried out by Jack Parsons, JPL. People will even to this day say that JPL stands for Jack Parsons Laboratories, but on paper it's Jet Propulsion Laboratories. JPL is major. It's a historic, so much surrounding this, so much history here. Jack Parsons was not professionally trained, yet he was tapping into high technology and building rockets. How do you do that without any type of formal training? There were no rocket programs in America before Jack Parsons. This is paramount to understand. This guy was tapping into theosophy, Thelema, the religion of Aleister Crowley. He was a disciple of Aleister Crowley, and he was working with L. Ron Hubbard, who was the founder of Scientology. Interestingly, not only did L. Ron Hubbard start Scientology, but he was a science fiction writer. Mm-hmm. The movie Battlefield Earth with John Travolta, well, that was written by L. Ron Hubbard. Interestingly also, John Travolta is a Scientologist, right? Now, I mention this because this is a man who writes science fiction, yet he started a religion based on science fiction. There has to be something in there where he's getting these clues and these ideas. He's getting these from another realm.
From that point, they ripped a hole open into space-time. And from that point afterwards, you had, regardless of what Parsons actually successfully completed during that with the Whore of Babylon and different things, after that, you had the Roswell incident. You had the Kenneth Arnold sightings. You had in '53 there was the swarm of UFOs that flew over the White House, and so there's this unleashing of supernatural activity that took place after that ritual was performed.
Babylon Working was successful according to Jack Parsons. Matter of fact, Parsons said in his Antichrist Manifesto that they were successful and that a child was conceived in that act, and that there was a spirit known as Hilarion. The Whore of Babylon was what they were trying to bring about. They believed what we believe, in that America was the final Babylon. Like, this was the revived Babylon. They believed it, and they were occultists. We're Christians, and we believe it. There's evidence to back this up. But yes, let's backtrack just for a second. What happened was they opened up this portal. They created a rift, and entities began to come through. Not just this Whore of Babylon being birthed, but other entities, because people all over the place started having paranormal encounters, and they began to report this to law enforcement, report this to the FBI, report this to whatever agency they could get in touch with. And so the federal agencies said, we've got to come up with an answer for this. We were not prepared for any of this. There's UFO activity. There's talk of entities and demons and winged creatures and just all kinds of weird, just paranormal, demonic activity following this ritual that Jack Parsons said finally worked. Wow. They did the ritual for a couple years. It finally worked, finally stuck. And that's what a scientist does. A scientist is going to work at something. He's going to work at the hypothesis until it's proven true or false. Now, finally, the researchers, the government puts together this group that says we're going to get answers to what exactly took place out there in the desert in California by Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. They go to Jack Parsons. And keep in mind, Jack Parsons is also working with the government. He's now been given, special privileges on things. So they go to him and they say, Jack, all of this stuff that's happening right now, did you do this? Did you do this? And he said, I think so. Now, shortly thereafter, Jack Parsons blows himself up in a lab. Accidental. It was not intentional. The occult belief was that whoever opened up the portal had to close the portal. Well, Jack Parsons is now dead. Wow. And the federal government is now having to understand and depict exactly to the public what's happening here. And so this group is researching, and out of that group, they finally start to make some headway. They know they're dealing with entities. And so in all of that, they begin to try to make contact with those entities, maybe for some help, maybe because they're trying to figure out how to close this thing, maybe they're trying to figure out how to undo what Jack Parsons did. So they go through satanic rituals to communicate, because that's the only method of communication that they know that works to contact these entities. In doing this, there's a small faction known as the Collins Elite. This is where our film picks up. The Collins Elite was a small group inside of this larger group that was originally created to get answers to all of this. But once they began to engage in satanic rituals and magic and alchemy, this group says, hey, you know what? This is not what we signed up for. This small group raises up. It's a faction. It's a counterpoint group, which means that they are no longer in agreement with the big group. They have a different opinion. They say, we have a Christian worldview. This goes against our Christian worldview. And so they see that entities are being channeled and communicated with, and now technology is being given through these rituals to these other members of the government. So the Collins Elite says, whoa, this is dangerous. You guys are really playing with fire here. We can't support this. We can't do this. And they came up with this idea that the aliens were going to take over, and that in order to protect our country from the aliens, from the entities, they believed that we needed to instate a forced theocracy based on the law of Moses. Because they thought if our country would go back under the law of Moses, that we would be untouchable from these entities. This group, this bigger group that was researching to get answers, they did not exist. Okay, this was what's known as a limited access program, or an LAP. A limited access program means that nobody in Congress has to know about this.
The Collins Elite were a counterpoint group within different governmental organizations that were party to satanic ritual being used to make contact with these aliens or with these higher entities. And because of their Christian faith, they had the conviction. They saw this taking place, and they're like, well, we don't need to be a part of this. This is what the Bible talks about in the worship of demons and of other gods. And especially being, using blood sacrifice and different types of black magic to be able to accomplish it. So they saw that, and they didn't want to be a part of it. They also were able to tie this back to what Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard did in the desert in the late 40s.
You've got literally just the group, and maybe a director knows about it. Nobody else. It's completely classified. It's top secret. It's under lock and key. But I want to mention something. One of the bombshells that we dropped was that there's a declassified federal document. Anyone watching this interview can go find this document. It's on the FBI vault. Okay. Document 6751. It's a document from the 40s. It was written by a prominent member of academia, and it was submitted to the FBI. In this document, they make a case that entities are not space aliens, but that they're interdimensional or extra-dimensional entities that are crossing over from a plane known as the ethereal plane. Now, we know, as researchers of the New Age movement, we know that is where the ascended masters are supposedly said to be on a high level. This ethereal plane is very popular. When you talk to people who astral project, people who channel, people who remote view, people who want to tap in or go on a trip, an ayahuasca trip, a DMT trip.
Ayahuasca, different trips, DMT, that does allow you to cross over, or allows a person to cross over into those dimensions. Outside of that, the satanic ritual has proven to be the most effective. And from the research that we've done, the people that we've interviewed, that seems to be the constant. That's like it's a guarantee you're going to make contact if you do this.
Now, the federal government had this document in the 40s, and language was used in this document that came right out of the playbook of Theosophy. Now, the guy that received this document, this is so crazy. The federal agent receives the document, and look, the FBI is constantly bombarded with phone calls and letters and emails, and they just can't deal with all of the propaganda from citizens. People make stuff up, and it's just it's nothing. It's crying wolf. So the FBI has to really be careful what they accept and what they don't. But this was back in the 40s. So the guy that receives the document, he recognizes that this information was received through paranormal means. As a matter of fact, the language used in the 40s was supernormal. That's the old way of saying paranormal, supernormal. So he says that all of this information was received through supernormal means, therefore we need to discount it. It's not valid information. Now that's the headline that he put, it's like a cover letter. If he really believed that, why did they classify the document? Why did they classify it and then forward it to all of these FBI prominent members at the highest level of security clearance? Why in the world would they classify it and lock it up if they didn't believe it? It wasn't until years later that they declassified document 6751. And I read this document and I'm thinking, okay, since the 40s, the federal government at the highest levels have known that these are not space aliens, that these are entities coming from another dimension.
In Scripture, you have the chariots that are mentioned, God's transport, basically, and it ripping through the space-time from the spiritual into the natural. I think that's basically the same thing that we're dealing with the UFOs. And because of the different deals that they've made with the governments, with the sharing of their technology, in order for them to have a safe space of being able to do whatever they do in the deep underground military bases. I think that some of the ones that you're seeing today are going to be basically the government taking that information and creating their own spacecraft. The technology that Standea was working on with anti-gravity craft, I think it follows along the same thing. You can go back to the Nazis with the Die Glocke and different things like that they made, which also they were highly involved with the occult. They didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to try this, this, and this. There was a basis. They went in there and they performed rituals to get the information to be able to practice that.
When you talk to someone who has worked in a deep underground military base, which we've interviewed people, they talk about different classes of entities. None of that is really mentioned in 6751. It's more so an overall summarization of what's going on. Now, there were some information about traveling through the dimensions. There's some very fascinating tidbits in this document. And we don't really go too deep into the document other than referencing it in the film, because we had to go through, we've got over 300 declassified documents in our collection right now, all pertaining to aliens, UFOs, extrasensory perception, psychic activity that they're training people to operate in. The federal government has been training people in the occult since the 40s. Training them in how to operate in occult magic and occult sciences. Everything our Bible tells us is absolutely forbidden. Our federal government has been a part of this since the 40s. And I want to add, back in the 40s, they still promoted the idea of a Christian nation of America. Yet behind the scenes, it just goes to show that the people in charge of our government have been pacifying the society since the beginning. And I don't understand how people could be so blinded. We present the information. This is what they said in the 40s, and it's only gotten worse over the years. Now, let me just draw us into this other area real fast. This group, the Collins Elite, they really wanted to create, how can I put this? They wanted to create some type of resistance. Non-aggressive, of course. Non-aggressive resistance. That's what I understand that from my studies. That's what I believe. They wanted a non-aggressive resistance to what was taking place, because they saw that when a man or a group of men began to communicate with these entities, the hunger for power gets greater and greater and greater, and then you're no longer trying to get answers. You're now wanting to ask them to give you blessings. You're now getting technology and information from these entities, and you're utilizing it in the way that you structure your government moving forward. And you would say, well, why would these entities need the government? It's not a matter of them needing the government. It's a matter of setting up the scene for the end times deception where the Antichrist is going to unite the governments of the world. It's all part of their long game. They've been working on this since the beginning of time. It didn't work at the Tower of Babel. The Lord ended it quickly. But here we are today. where are we today, and what happened between then and now? Well, what we find out is that one of our contacts, Stan Deyo, who, by the way, Tom Horn gave us a great endorsement of Stan Deyo. Tom Horn, before his house burned down years ago, he had this big newspaper article from the UK. And standing on the cover with these other elite doctors and scientists, it's Stan Deyo. And they're giving him credit in the UK, public knowledge, that he's working on anti-gravity craft. Now, the film that we did called The Hollow Earth Chronicles, we did a whole segment in that film on Operation High Jump. This was a joint task force between the American government, the British government, and the Australian government, headed by the US and Admiral Byrd. They go down to Antarctica in what turns into a UFO battle. And their big plan got cut in half, and they had to come home early because we lost men, we lost ships. There's stories of UFOs coming up out of the water and just cutting ships in half with laser. I mean, just crazy stuff that you only see in movies. What's fascinating about this is that this was a joint task force with those same three governments that are now working together with Stan Deyo, the British, the American, and the Australians, working together on alien technology yet again, years after Operation High Jump happened. Stan Deyo was working as a secret agent for the FBI in Australia inside of the deep underground military bases. And he said while he was in the program, he knew about the deal with Eisenhower. He knew in the program that President Eisenhower had made a deal with what they called alien entities. I believe that the evidence points to two events taking place, and these two events happened 1 year apart. The first one happened at Edwards Air Force Base, where Eisenhower disappears, and they call it a media blackout. It was kind of similar to when Hillary Clinton and President Obama disappeared and were at the Bilderberg meeting, but nobody knew where they were, and it was called the media blackout. People freaked out, right? Well, something similar happened here, where Eisenhower is no longer on radar, and they come back later and say, oh, well, he had a dental emergency, and so he had to go seek private dental care. Now, that happened, and then a year later, we have the Holloman Air Force Base event. Now, the thing about the Holloman event was that people were there who witnessed it. Holloman is where they were out on the landing strip, and you had UFOs landing, meeting with him. Meeting took place with Eisenhower and others, and then those UFOs took off. Now, there were eyewitnesses who have come forward. I was just talking about this with Chad Riley because he found some videotapes from the 90s. This is before the internet was doing its thing. In the 90s, there were videos that were recorded, old VHS tapes of some of these disclosure type engagements. I don't know what you want to call it, but these are men that were there. They're decorated men from the government, and they're now speaking out that yes, UFOs were landing and taking off at Holloman Air Force Base, and I believe it was 1955. We do know that things began to be more apparent after Babylon working, and therefore there were more things taking place where there was people seeking the entity. So what I believe happened was that the rift was open, the tear in the space-time continuum, if you will, a portal, Stargate was opened, and the government got involved, the feds got involved. Once they began to communicate with the entities, there was now a relationship being built, and it was no longer shock value that there are these entities who want to work with us. So I think that was definitely an open door, no pun intended, for those entities to now be communicating with President Eisenhower years later. Not too many years later, but a few years later. They're now meeting with Eisenhower, and so the story goes like this. We're on the road trip. We're driving out to meet with Ray Boucher, who was contacted by the Department of Defense. This is really important. This is one of those like haymakers. The information that he gives us that he presented his full disclosure in our film Higher Entities. But we're driving there and we're having a discussion, and we decided let's just go ahead and let's run some cameras, while we're driving and talking. So we set up our production stuff in Darren's SUV. We're driving down the road, and we have this conversation about this Eisenhower deal. See, what I had heard and researched was a little different than what Darren had picked up in his research. And this is one of those scenes in the movie where it's just like, wow, like the stuff that came out was so organic and unbelievable. Apparently, there were two events that happened, and a lot of people blur them. A lot of people will mix it up with the Edwards Air Force Base and the Holloman. They're two separate events a year apart. That's so important. But the idea is that the gray aliens on record met with Eisenhower, And then you had this other group of entities known as like the Tall Whites or the Nordics. They met with Eisenhower separately, and they warned him. They said, you do not ever want to make a deal with the gray aliens. They are deceptive. They are very deceptive. All they want to do is deceive you and enslave you. They're demonic, basically. I don't think they use the word demonic, right? Because they're all demonic. But they were warning Eisenhower never to enter into a covenant with the Greys. Well, they were the good guys. The Greys were the bad guys. This is fascinating because if you fast forward into this idea of a coming deception, they had to already set the groundwork to create a good alien, bad alien, good cop, bad cop. Because what we're dealing with here is a bunch of liars. You know, Satan's a liar. His demons are liars. That's why when someone starts playing with a Ouija board, their grandmother starts talking to them. Well, it's not your grandmother, bro. Yeah. That's a demon. Yeah. That's an entity who wants to deceive you. Sure. They want to steal, to kill, and to destroy. That's biblical. And we're also told as Christians, we got to be vigilant and we got to be sober-minded because Satan is our adversary. And the word Satan, the name Satan isn't really a name. We have this misconception that Satan, the devil, the red pitchfork, and in reality, Ha-Satan is the enemy, the adversary. And so when we say Satan, it could actually be referring to the whole class, team of demons and entities, fallen angels. And so what we have is we have the fallen angels, and now it's my personal belief. Let me just lay this out real quick. It's my personal belief based on the book of Revelation and based on me using a calculator and understanding some definitions. I was able to calculate that if a third of the angels fell with Lucifer, with Satan, the Satan, right? If a third of them fell with him, and that's also based on another passage of a third of the stars getting knocked down to earth. If that passage means what we think it means, and if we understand it correctly, a third of the angels fell with Satan. And you can do your math and figure out that equals somewhere between 30 to 50 plus million fallen angels on the surface of the earth. Now, out of that, some of them were put in chains. The Bible tells us this because the ones that committed sexual sin, the Genesis 6, they have been locked up in chains. We can read about this in Jude. But the ones that are not locked in chains, just think about it, 30 to 50 plus million fallen angels on the face of the earth. I made the comment recently in an interview I did that is more than the population of the largest state in America.
I mean, these are the gods of the nations. These are the ones who have been worshipped throughout time. These are the ones of the nations who they set up the groves and the high places and offered sacrifices to them. They've been presenting themselves to humanity throughout time under different names, but under the same descriptions of their characteristics. So when you look at it in those kind of terms, and to also answer your question about are they otherworldly or interdimensional, through the document 6751, we did find that back in the 40s even, they were saying that they were interdimensional beings. Wow. So that will parallel with what Scripture has to say of fallen angels. With Job, for instance, you have Job, and this kind of is a crossover between our first film, Hollow Earth Chronicles, and the latest Higher Entities. But in Job, you have, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. So on one hand, you have him being able to present himself before the Lord, but he also is able to, and that's the spiritual realm. That's the things that we can't access. There's a barrier that's been put in place. But Satan and these divine beings, with the divine council, they were able to hold an audience before the Lord. At the same time, Satan says here that he's allowed, or that he's been going to and fro in the earth and walking up and down in it. So that's an interdimensional feat.
And by the way, Tom Horn, his brother-in-law, was murdered. He worked at Los Alamos. This was the first time he ever told the story publicly. He never spoke this story publicly. Matter of fact, he told his sister that he would not disclose the full story while she was still alive. Yet here he is. He worked it out to tell us the story in our film. His brother-in-law worked for Los Alamos. And interestingly, he married Tom's sister, who had alien encounters from the time she was about 13 years old. Not only did she suffer alien visitations and paralysis as a child, her daughter the next generation, when she entered into that age of puberty, she began to get attacked. And then her husband, this is where it gets crazy. He comes home one day. They start drinking, knocking back a few. One thing leads to another, which I found out a lot of times when people start drinking, they're able to pull things out of the recesses that they would never talk about. So many stories of alien abductions and demonic activity people are willing to talk about after they have a few drinks. Things that are in those deep recesses come out. Now, I'm not saying that to recommend or to I'm just saying that a lot of the stories we find out about in our research comes from one guy having a few drinks, and then it just starts coming out.
Wow.
It's like the filter's gone. Long story short, and we give the full story in Higher Entities. It's a great story. Not great as in good, but it's very fascinating. He comes home, he and the wife start drinking, and she decides she's going to share some of her childhood history with him that he didn't know about. And if I remember correctly how it all went down, he comes out and says, well, this is crazy because we're actually working with this type of stuff at Los Alamos. Now, he gives her information that we don't know, but he disclosed to her what he was doing in the alien base, that the conspiracy theorists call an alien base. But now it doesn't really seem like a conspiracy theory anymore, because if it was just a theory, why would he have been killed 24 hours later? 24 hours after he shares what they were doing at Los Alamos, he disappears. No body found, nothing. They say that they've never seen him back in the offices, So she reaches out and she's like, where's my husband never came home from work. He left for work. He left our house. He drove, he went to Los Alamos, but he never came home. Well, she now wants to get her benefits just to help pay for, for all the expenses that he was bringing in money. He's no longer there, and he's been working hard. There's pension and guarantees that she's supposed to get. They won't give her anything because there's no body. Without a body, there's no death certificate. Without a death certificate, there's no benefits. So she, working for the federal government as well, she starts rattling the cage high up, and finally, once she starts dropping information that's putting fear in people, they, in order to shut her up, finally say, okay, you know what, here you go, here's your benefits, done. Now, that tells me that it's not a conspiracy theory, that there's actual fact to this. There's alien activity, demonic activity going on at Los Alamos, and it was so serious that they would have had his house bugged, and that they were tracking every discussion he had in that house. And that was the thing, was he was working in the DUM, the Deep Underground Military Base. From my understanding, he was working there, and he told her what he was working on. Wow. We don't even know what that was. That's what's so fascinating about this story, is that we don't even know what he disclosed, but it was something so serious that 24 hours later, he's dead. Again, we're dealing with the fallout of what took place at the Babylon Working. Babylon Working changed everything. I believe that was prophetic on the satanic timeline. That was a big deal. And so I do believe for a fact that Roswell was just another byproduct. And I also believe, based on another FBI document that we have in our stack of over 300, is that there were more than one craft. And I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say there was possibly 9 bodies according to one declassified document. This is going to lead us right into Ray Boucher. Ray Boucher is now bringing all of this current. We're no longer dealing with 1940s or 50s or 60s. We're dealing with, our lifetime, and this is where it just hits home. Ray Boucher is an ordained minister. He has been a Baptist minister, a Lutheran minister, and he's also known as a Lutheran exorcist. We're very particular about who we work with and who we yoke up with in ministry. And after talking with Ray and looking into him, he is extremely biblically sound. His theology is right in line with Scripture on all the majors that would matter. And so we did some homework on this guy. Tom Horn, Derek Gilbert, goodness, everybody that we talked to, people that I'm not even going to name, people that we talked to off the record, everybody kept saying, including Darren Geisinger and Chad Riley, they all said, you got to talk to Ray Boucher. They said he was met with by 2 members of the Department of Defense because of his unique background as a minister, as an exorcist, and as the head of MUFON for his state, which is Nebraska. Wow. This is a guy who was heavily involved in the UFO community back before the internet was a thing. He would go to these meetings, he would read up. I mean, back then it was like a videotape was like $60, like a documentary videotape. You pay $60. I mean, these were the days before the internet, before YouTube. Information was harder to get. but Ray Boucher was heavily involved in the UFO community back in the day. And so being the head of MUFON, and also for his state, and also for being a minister and an exorcist and a UFO advocate, a UFO truth advocate, these two men contact him from the DOD, and they say, we really need to meet with you because of your unique standing. We need to meet with you, and we need your, basically we need you to consult with us about what some of this may be. So he met secretly with these members of the Department of Defense, and they told him that they were part of a non-existent group inside the DOD working on government facilities paid for by taxpayer dollars, and that they began to try to get answers to some of this stuff, and they began to engage in occult rituals to communicate with these entities. Now let me explain this. If you don't feel like this is just a reoccurrence of the Collins elite, I mean, this is recent. This is happening in the modern time period. He says that their bigger group was engaging in what he called satanic rituals, and he even said that the DOD contacts hinted at human sacrifice being done on the taxpayer dollar behind closed doors on government facilities. He said they started off with, we just want to get answers. And he says, and that turned into a we can do better mentality. We can do more than this. We can go above and beyond. This is the same story you see when you're watching movies about famous drug dealers. Oh, we can do better mentality. Starts off, they're just selling a little dope. And before you know it, they're a kingpin, and they just want more and more and more. It's not that they need it anymore, but it's that we can do better mentality. We can't leave well enough alone, to quote Karate Kid. We cannot leave well enough alone, and we can do better, and we're going to do better, and we're going to get more technology, we're going to get more information, we're going to get more power, and we're going to rise up by the power of the entities. And so Ray Boucher explained to them that yes, this stuff was extremely demonic. That yes, y'all had a good idea. Basically, your instincts were correct. This is demonic and you don't need to be doing it. They knew that was the case, but they needed someone they could talk to, such as Ray Boucher with his unique background. And so he was able to meet with them, and I believe they met twice. They had some phone conversations. But the thing is Ray wouldn't meet with us originally. He didn't want to talk to anybody. He's a very friendly guy. He was willing to just be cordial and hello, nice to meet you. But when we told him we wanted him on camera and that we wanted to meet with him, it was like, well, I could probably work with you guys at some point. He says, but I'm really busy. It's kind of like the nice way of saying, sorry, can't help you. We continue to
with his 14-year-old nieces, cousins, family, other children, and possibly my name will come up soon. Why? It's coming out. You know that video that I posted? I have somebody in the UK editing it right now. It's on the underground tunnels. It's under the Getty Museum in LA. I didn't want to say nothing yet because I could get killed. You know what? Bring it. There is nothing that anybody can try to do to me right now that you haven't already done. I don't like to be interrogated. But like I said, I know things that your average person has no idea about Ron Jeremy. So why? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. Because Joe Biden has a water island. Jeffrey Epstein had an island. Zuck, Facebook owner, he has an island. Guess what neighboring island he's on? He neighbors right next to Water Island. It's a kid island. Go figure. What does he own? Our social media. Ain't that funny? The man who has everybody's location, privacy, and your pictures that you posted every 10 years. Yeah, that's the one who owns an island right next door to Joe Biden and Jeffrey Epstein. Look it up. Ask me how I know. Trump has took down many child rings. Yeah, I posted all of them. Not even all of them. He took down the biggest ring in Australia right now. It's an all-boys ring. The biggest ring. This man has been in business for decades.
Well, he sent our military for training for underground.
Yes, the military
warfare.
got different training. Look it up. Why would the military get underground training in infrared? Why? Want me to tell you why? Because there's ventilators underground. There's ventilators. There's a different oxygen life. There's different lights. There's a different world under this ground. All over the place.
City.
Every city. They link to houses. They link to the ocean. They link to so much. And you wouldn't believe it, but you know what? I'll save that for you little dummies who feel like, go Biden 2020. Go Biden 2020. Yeah, I want him going. I want him going all the way to jail. That's what I want him going. Hey, real quick. Joan Rivers, somebody said Joan Rivers told us about Michelle Obama. Joan Rivers is Michelle Obama's best friend. That's why. Well, she was before she,
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a trans.
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
How can these people be prosecuted? Biden's, Clinton's, Obama's. Do you notice that every person that was on Jeffrey Epstein's case, including the judge, including the judge's kid, was killed? No one asking any questions. Okay, so let me tell you again. There are cameras everywhere trying to tell you that these mail-in ballots are okay, but nobody had the camera on Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Nobody has any video proof of the man who had lockdown facility around the clock 24/7 eye security. No one has that video, but we're going to talk about the mail-in ballots not being fake.
That and Epstein didn't kill himself.
And that's why we continue to have problems, besides the fact of the people that she was trafficked to, the political people and Hollywood. And then there's other things that we haven't even got into yet that are worse. But
yeah, John Podesta, Pizzagate is very real.
I'm not worried
have
about
dealt
it.
with voodoo masters. You know what that means? You know what that means? Paranormal activity. You know what that means? Witchcraft, black magic, hoodoo.
You guys still don't know the whole story. We've told you a lot of horrible things that have happened. We haven't even told you the worst things that have happened yet. When she came, she was what I would call close to the point of no return, where if she had continued in the life that she was in, at some point something would have switched, clicked off. She would have been able to cry out to God. There would have been, her soul would have just been gone. And I don't know how to express that the right way, so I hope you're not gonna, beat me up with, well, God can save anybody. I already know that. But that's not what we're talking about.
Not me. I was not close. I was close.
She was almost past the point of no return.
They'll whoop you. They'll beat you. Depending on who it is.
Like to death?
Close. I always used to say I always say there's things worse than death. They beat the hell out of you. And they don't just beat you. They cut you with knives inside of you. They do things that you can't even imagine.
I am still not able to tell you where my sister's bodies and brothers' bodies, people that I've met, are buried. So if I am still kicking because I can't find them, then trust me, I'll be kicking when you leave. But now we're in the situation where our lives are completely in danger now, but we thank you guys. It's going to take action. It's going to take people standing up to the reality of this, making noise. Disrupting the demand is the only thing that's going to make this stuff stop. That's it. You have to disrupt the demand. You have to make some noise, and you have to kind of disrupt and interrupt the business. Everybody wonder what my...
Even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse
number
me,
one.
Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take... No, you're number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We
Part
did
of my
not
standard fare.
I'm the guy that
He
brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
industry.
All right, let him
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going...
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's...
Getting to net zero emissions means change. Discover more about Shell's climate ambition.
Insulin. It's going to...
Donald, would you
and
just
you don't
be quiet
know
for a
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't know her view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So,
mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
I'd like you
and we will protect people
President,
with
I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead. The things that we've done, insulin. I give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost. I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say, this is open discussion.
No,
let me ask you about...
The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option, number one.
Joe, you agreed with Bernie Sanders, who's far left, on the manifesto, we call it. And that gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
are you saying
I'm not going to listen to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm here standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to do is
Super Tuesday. You got very lucky.
Here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
You graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
surprised.
You pick
You'd be surprised.
the wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you give them better health care at a much lower price because
by the way,
Obamacare is no good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do that.
already fixed it.
He has never offered a plan.
Fixed it to an extent.
He has never done a
as
single
you might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time,
and it's too expensive.
Let the president's go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive. Premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. Chris, we want to get rid of it.
I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time. Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
Now, make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question because the question is
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
Who's
on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
we've ended this.
He's going to pack the court.
Not going to give a list. We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it?
Ever seen, and I suspect most of you, if not all of you, have ever seen and discussed.
Well, that was a hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck. That was the worst debate I have ever seen. In fact, it wasn't even a debate. It was a disgrace.
You just took the words out of my mouth. You used some high-minded language. I'm just going to Say it like it is.
Don't normally do another video on the weekend, normally just a sermon, sometimes 2 sermons, rarely, but I had to put this out there. Congratulations, Christians. Congratulations, man. You guys elected Joe Biden president of the United States. Exit polls show that at least 1 million of you, Christians, voted for Joe Biden in swing states alone. And that million plus is a 2 million plus swing. If those votes go from Biden to Trump, it would have been a 2 million vote difference. Trump would have carried the swing states and carried the election. But congratulations, Christians. You guys did it, man. You got Joe Biden in the White House. You have yourselves to be congratulated. You have yourselves to thank. And one day you'll stand before God and you can explain to him what the whole deal is. And carry the election. It would have been a 2 million vote difference. Trump would have carried the swing states and carried the election. But congratulations, Christians. 1 million of you, Christians, voted for Joe Biden in swing states alone. And that million plus is a 2 million plus swing. If those votes go from Biden to Trump, it would, man. I need to go no further than abortion. This guy is for abortion to the max. And I'm talking about abortion all the way up until babies are born. Abortion everywhere. And what did Jesus say in the Bible? He said that whoever harms even the least of these little ones, it's better for them to have a millstone tied around their neck and to be cast into the deepest ocean. Drowning is like one of the worst, if not the worst, death possible. And so you support that. Every Christian that voted for Joe Biden supports abortion. You support the entire radical left Democratic agenda. You support all the perversion, all the filth, all the unnatural things, all the sickness. You support it. You support it. And you're saying that this man, Joe Biden, is a godly, Bible-living man. And you said, also in exit polls, you said, oh, but President Trump is just too mean. He's too verbally abusive. He doesn't say nice things. No one says President Trump's perfect. I'm not perfect to you. And I'm not even saying President Trump's a Christian. Not at all. I would never call him a godly man. But I'll tell you this much. He gave all you Christians, all of us Christians, so many rights here and abroad, protected Christians from death overseas when Biden, when he was with Obama, did the opposite. He did so much for Israel, who we're supposed to love with all of our hearts, because those who love Israel, God will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. And again, everybody has the right to vote how they want to vote. And it's all cool in the gang, man. You vote for who you want to vote for. But remember, when you start seeing what becomes of this, of your life here in the former America, now no Morica, because it's no more. The old America that the founding fathers created exists no more. This is no Morica. When you see what unfolds as of January 20 next year, all the way through, you can have no one to thank but yourself for everything that happens. Be careful what you ask for, careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. In this case, you will get it. And you come back and tell me later on how that vote went for you. I'm going to leave it right there. It's just amazing to me how dumbed down, how ridiculous, how non-biblical, how anti-spiritual, how anti-God, anti-Jesus, anti-Bible that today's Christian church, for all intents and purposes, is. It's a massive, massive, massive joke. And the bad thing is, the joke's not funny. This is the bottom line. Jesus Christ is all of our only hopes, my friends. The rapture is upon us. Christ is going to take the true bride of Christ. I'm talking about real Christians, not Christians who are backslidden, not Christians who believe and teach lies against the Bible. Real Christians who follow Christ, who do what the Bible tells us to do. We're going to leave soon out of here. All the backsliders who once knew Christ but now don't are going to be left behind. They don't think they are, but when they are, they'll believe it then, trust me. With all the unsaved, for 7 pure years of hell, where if God didn't intervene, no flesh remain alive, is billions and billions and billions would die the most grotesque, awful, horrific deaths imaginable. Why go through all of that? You don't have to. Jesus Christ is your only hope. If you've never been saved, you're backslidden, pray the prayer. Do the 6 steps I have in the box below the video. No one's guaranteed any more time in your life. If you'd like prayer, contact me. I pray for you every day. I love you all so much. And again, I'm just dumbfounded by today's church. I really am. Their actions speak louder than words, and their actions are actions of the devil for all intents and purposes. They've lost their spiritual guidance. The Holy Spirit has left the backsliders. He no longer guides them, so they do really, really dumb things all the time. And it makes my brain hurt to try to comprehend what today's wicked, evil, filthy church has become. Sickening. Again, I love you all so much. Those of you who hate me, I love you. It doesn't make a difference how much you hate me, how much you try to hurt me. All the social media people that try to ban me and try to throttle my videos, I love all you guys, and I pray for you, man, that God would bless you and show you the way to the truth. Again, if you'd like prayer, contact me. I pray for you every day. And look up True Christians or Redemption Draweth Nigh. We fly soon. Can't wait to get out of this cesspool. May God bless you. Share this video. Get the word out. And again, congratulations, Christians. Woohoo! You elected Joe Biden. I hope you're proud of yourselves. I hope you're really, really happy. We'll see what happens in the next few years.
Managing your projects should feel more like this. That's why you need ClickUp. With ClickUp, when you want to assign a task, you task it. If you have to adjust your timeline, you change it. If you need to show your progress, you upload it. ClickUp is already used by thousands of the most productive teams out there and has over 5,000 five-star reviews. So get less of this and more of this. Less of this and more of this. Less of this, more of this. Try ClickUp free, forever.
This is Dabu7. Let's take a look here at what can happen as Trump advances here, whether he's going to make this another go as president or if he gets shot down. Many can argue that this whole thing is already in the bag and it's just a puppet show. But I'm here to look at the road ahead. Whether you like Trump or not, whether you voted for him or not, you can sit there and say it's rigged, it's a election, it's not an election, and you go on and on and on. I get it, okay? But we still have things
you can't just
in front of us. So that is what I'm going to look at here and what could possibly happen. There's some
Dabu.
caveats to some of this stuff here as well. But
Dabu7.
as I said in a previous video, there's a 3% chance these guys can tie. Some don't want to hear that. Some don't understand that. They didn't really try to break it down as to why. They just put up a graph and put a 3% up. So I want to kind of go over some of the possibilities here. Now, what can easily happen here is Trump loses all the contested stuff, and Biden just goes right on with the point lead he has, and he's inaugurated and he becomes president. Even though a lot of people out there don't want to hear that, you have to face the fire in some of these situations, the outcome. What could it be? So that would be the easy walk down from here. Now, in terms of Trump, if he wants to win this thing and get it in the bag,
that's what I said,
outside of the fact that the talk of selection, election, everything being set up and all that, in front of us, what we have here is Trump fighting in many states legal battles. These legal battles set up an opportunity for Trump to be able to take down state by state by state. If he did that, he would have to take every single one that he is contested in, including Pennsylvania, to be able to hit that 270. And he would have to flip some away from Joe Biden. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Trump's legal team can go in, and if they win on certain grounds in here, saying that there was irregular votes casted or this and that, what they can do is they can say that some of this stuff is just going to be thrown out. Okay? And it always comes back down to the Electoral College. But if, say they go to a state that gives Biden 270, and they take it away or they throw it out, and he don't win it because of whatever, that would put both men under 270. And what this does is this opens up a contingent election. Pretty crazy sounding, right? Well, there's a possibility for it. And the contingent is based on our Constitution. This has happened in the past. We had saw Thomas Jefferson was elected president as a contingent election took place in 1801. When the electoral vote in the previous year's election resulted in a tie between him and the incumbent president, John Adams. Then in 1825, Adams' son, John Quincy Adams, also won the presidency in a contingent election. So this has happened several times, and many people not aware of it. And what this means is if they fight these legal battles in court and they stop Joe Biden from hitting 270, even though Trump doesn't hit it, it goes to this contingent election. So, like I said, a lot of caveats here, and interesting. If we were to see it go down this path, talk about something people didn't expect. But that's why we cover these things. We put these options on the table, and we say, hey, it's a possibility. And in the end, when these things come to light, we'll let you guys know. I do all the updates on the live streams, and I break this stuff down into greater detail on the live streams, man. You got to make sure to join us. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, D-Live exclusive. It's going down. The gloves come off. You'll find links below.
Good evening, people. Watchmen97 Lisa Boy to hear from. The FEC chair drops the hammer. The results of the election are illegitimate. Now, I don't know what they're going to do because they're not saying what they're going to do, but the Federal Election Commission, the chairman, Trey Traynor, has dropped the hammer by declaring that the results are illegitimate. Traynor has gone on the record with a bombshell announcement following investigations into the election ballot count in Pennsylvania. Says the FEC chair says, based on the info gathered from PA and elsewhere in the country, the presidential election is illegitimate. Like I said, I'm not sure what they're going to do. It says Traynor, the highest-ranking election official in the United States, confirmed that in his professional opinion, there has not been transparency in the election. The evidence produced so far has led him to determine that this election is illegitimate. He dropped the bombshell on the liberal news media at Newsmax. Why would he call Newsmax liberal? Newsmax is not liberal. But anyway, at Newsmax, when he made an announcement saying he believes there is voter fraud taking place in these places. Says, there is no legitimate reason at all for observers to be denied access to ballot counting, Traynor confirmed, adding that the ballot counting must be considered illegitimate. The announcement from Traynor's America top federal election official is bound rock the boat of those who have declared victory for Democratic nominee Joe Biden. So I'm assuming they're a little pissed right now. Speaking to Newsmax, Chairman Traynor highlighted the importance of election integrity. Despite winning a court order which allows the Trump campaign to send observers to watch ballot counting in Pennsylvania from 6 feet away, ballot watchers have not been allowed into the polling locations in a meaningful way. When observers have been permitted to watch, the goalpost has been moved away, Traynor points out. Simply put, there has not been transparency in this election. Our whole political system is based upon transparency to avoid the appearance of corruption, he says. The state allows those observers to be there, which they were not allowed there. If the law isn't being followed in this election, it's illegitimate. And that's coming from the top chairperson for the election committee. The Trump campaign held a press conference on Saturday to make a big announcement on their own. They declared they will go to war over this in the courts. As Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani said, the media don't get to decide who won the election, judges do. He's absolutely right. Chairman Traynor, an old-school gunslinger from Texas appointed by Trump, is behind them all the way. What Team Trump is claiming are very valid allegations, he agrees. The allegations need to be fully vetted by the court system. He predicts that the charges are serious enough to end up in the Supreme Court. Now, I'm going to link this in the description box. Like I said, it is going to probably end up in the Supreme Court. I'm sure it will. But they got to get moving on this thing now, before even at the latest January. So we'll see what happens. You talk about a civil war being bought out. It's going to be one regardless, but if he gets back in there and gets reelected, all hell's going to break loose. I had an open vision, and I didn't say anything about it yesterday. And I was walking down the hall here where I live, and I saw him winning again, reelected. And I saw the rapture taking place. Now, I don't put any stock. Yeah, I mean, I have visions, and they've come to pass, but that's what I had, because I don't have them often. But I said to myself, I'm like, wow, that would be nice. So we'll see what happens. I'll link the article in the description box. This just came out 2 hours ago, so I'll link it in there. But in the meantime, have a nice evening. Thank you. Good morning, people. Watchmen97 Lisa Boyce here. Isn't it funny that we didn't hear anything about COVID while the election was going on? But as soon as there's a threat that Trump might come back, they're putting lockdowns in effect. Ohio was going into effect with stricter COVID measures as of Monday. Isn't that peculiar? It's not a coincidence. They know what they're doing. I'm going to give you the gospel. It's in 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 4. The reason why we're saved and the reason why we're going to be raptured out of this God-forsaken land here shortly. God shed his blood. God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to shed his blood for our sins, past, present, and future. Was buried and rose again on the third day, according to Scripture. We are saved by grace through faith. Feel it. I'm not setting a date. I don't know a specific date. No one does. But we're right at the cusp of the rapture. I'm going to read something to you, and this is off of Now the End Begins, and this is an excellent article. It says, if your Democrat-run city or state issues a COVID-19 84 anti-Thanksgiving no-travel lockdown orders, go away and remember why we're free. It goes on to say that when they put the yellow stars on the Jews in Germany, most of them meekly accepted their fate, thinking it would pass. It didn't. And we need to remember the lessons of history or prepare to repeat them and lose our freedom, which is what's here. As Americans, we're not free because someone else allowed us to have freedom. We're free here in America because brave men and women risked their lives and gave their lives to beat back anarchy and tyranny. Whenever it reared its filthy face and paid the price for victory. The present tyranny of COVID-19 84 combined with the current rise of Marxism in our nation is as grave a threat to our freedom and liberties as Hitler and the Nazi war machines was. This is a war, and the prize is your freedom. Will you let them take it? Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. That was by Ronald Reagan. I see it happening every day. I see loads and loads of people with masks on their face everywhere I go. I went to a restaurant yesterday to get something. They told me I had to leave because I wasn't wearing a mask. They said I was going to say something, but then I backed down, and he said, just wait outside. He quietly said, just wait outside. I know, I understand. He said, just wait outside. He came outside. I went back to the car, and he came outside, and he said, I hate this thing myself. He said, but they're putting into effect here in Ohio at midnight tomorrow night a mandate that if people don't start, they're going to mandate the companies. What's going to happen if customers come into these companies without a mask, the companies are going to be fined. And if they keep coming in there without a mask, they're going to close them up. That's how this thing has gotten out of hand. But like I said in the beginning, it's funny that it wasn't raised during the election time, because they knew Biden was going to win. But soon as Trump has a chance to win, it's coming back up again, just like that. Now the mandates are being handed out again, just like that. Yeah. So I asked him, I said, how long are you wearing that mask for? He said 14 hours a day, 12 to 14 hours a day. I said, you know, you're not supposed to do that. He said, I don't have a choice. I said, you have a choice. You can stand up. He didn't say nothing after that. You see what's happening? It's getting worse. That's why I know we're on our way out of here. This article goes on to say, this year, as the New World Order elites like Killer Cuomo in New York and Drunken Nancy in San Francisco and all the others are threatening you with COVID anti-Thanksgiving, no travel lockdown threats, we need to rise up, one voice, and tell them a resounding no. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to put this in street terms. There ain't no way in hell you're going to sit there, some government is going to sit there and tell me how many people I can have in my house and tell me what I can get to eat. I will die. That's not going to happen. Like that article I put in my blog with Fauci yesterday. It's time for he said that it's time for people to start doing what they're told. Those are fighting words. No government's going to tell me what to do and tell me how many people I can have in my house, if I have any, especially for the holiday. No. People need to stand up and start saying no. I tell you what, if enough people walked into an establishment and said, no, we're not wearing this mask. No, we're not doing this, it would get the attention of the government. They would have to do something. There isn't enough jail space to put you in jail, especially over something like that. And a lot of the cops won't even comply with it. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But it says here, preferably played at, people should say no, at the level of 10, the volume level of 10. When they put the yellow stars on the Jews in Germany, they accepted their fate. It goes on to say that whenever any form of government becomes destructive, and these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. That's the Declaration of Independence, 1776. If you're sick, stay home. I wouldn't want to go nowhere if I was really sick. Any sickness. And the average person, if they're really sick, they don't want to do anything but stay home. But if you think you have COVID, get tested, find out you have it, stay home. That's with the flu, that's with pneumonia, that's with anything. That's always been a rule. I don't know why it changes now, but that's always been a rule. But the very idea of locking down whole sections telling people they can't have company, telling people you are commanded to wear a mask, locking down areas and businesses and knocking people out of work. That's something different. In other words, taking away your freedom. It should be, if you want to wear a mask, go ahead. It says, remember, these rules are only for the little people. They do not apply to the elites. Observe New York, and I got an article here with a picture of him here. It says, observe New York Governor Cuomo not wearing a mask. CNN Chris Cuomo not wearing a mask. Drunken Nancy violating her own lockdown in order to get her hair done. Not wearing a mask. This is what tyranny looks like. It starts small but grows really large. Why do you think Cubans risk their lives floating 90 miles on the planks of wood to get to America? It's because they would rather risk losing their lives to escape tyranny than to live under depots. We need a little of that Cuban freedom spirit here. The war is real and the battle's hot and the time is short. If you want to make plans this Thanksgiving with friends and family, go ahead. Don't let nobody stop you from doing that. This is what Trump was fighting for freedom. And you see how they locked him down. You see what they did. He put out tweets this morning talking about how the election was rigged, and rigged it was. But that's what he was fighting for. The people's amendments, especially a Second Amendment. Like I said, it's funny how they're talking about this virus again when they're threatened with the possibility of Trump possibly coming through as a second election. They didn't mention it before. When they knew Biden had it, they were celebrating. But now it's coming up again. I'm going to link this article in the description box, and I'm going to come up. I got more news later. But this is something to think about. It really is. Because what's happening is that your religious... I just did a video yesterday about religious freedoms. It's being taken away. Now your freedoms are being taken away. Everything we're seeing, and I've said it before, this is a prelude to the Antichrist and the tribulation. This is all set up for the tribulation. If the tribulation is this close, we are this close to the tribulation, how much closer are we to the rapture? The only requirement for the rapture is believing in what Christ did for you at the cross. That's it. Regardless of what you've heard in the past, regardless of what your traditions was in the past in the church, this is all the requirement for salvation
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of On the Run for Christ. I hope everybody is having a blessed day. I wanted to make this video to record the dream that I had the other day, and so I am going to get started. Before I start with the dream, if there's anyone who's in need of a Bible or a left behind letter, please email me at ontherunforchrist@gmail.com. and I will get those left behind letters out to you immediately. But as far as the Bible, I'm waiting for those to be restocked. So just bear with me. Also, if there's someone in need of prayer, you can also email me, and I will definitely keep you and your family uplifted in prayer. If there's someone listening to this who have not accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, stop what you are doing.